Hey guys, good morning. The Blogging Buddhist here, and I'm pretty fired up and excited today. I'm going to be talking to you about hemoglobin A1C as it relates to diabetes. But before I do that, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit the follow and subscribe buttons that are just below your screen so that you can be part of my channel, and don't forget to turn on your notifications so that you don't miss any of my uploads. Now, the reason I'm so excited and fired up this morning is because I just got out of a scheduled appointment with my endocrinologist, which, as you know, the pancreas is part of the endocrine system, which is why I see an endocrinologist. Now, I should probably start by explaining to the folks who may not be aware or who may not have diabetes what exactly an A1C is. So, you have your blood sugar test that you take via finger prick. Those are measured in millimoles per liter. So that's the amount of blood glucose that you have based on that specific measurement. Your A1C is an average over a 3-month period of what your blood sugars are, and that's presented in a percentage. And the reason why is because your red blood cells typically have a lifespan of 3 to 4 months. So that 3 to 4 month lifespan is the reason why you get your A1C taken every 3 months. Now, what happens is the more sugar you have, the higher your blood sugar levels, the more sugar will bond to those red blood cells, which is why it's given in a percentage. So, just to give you a baseline for comparison here, a non-diabetic is expected to have a hemoglobin A1C of between 5 to 6%. A diabetic with good control is expected to have between 6 to 7%. If it starts getting above that 7, that's where your endocrinologist or your general practitioner is going to start telling you that you need to monitor your blood sugar more closely and you need to start taking better control and making some lifestyle changes. About 6 years ago when I started on pump therapy, my hemoglobin A1C was 8.2. Now, most endocrinologists and doctors will agree that anything above that 8%, you're starting to get into that red zone where you're going to start causing organ damage, you're going to start facing diabetic complications, things of that sort. I've known people who have had A1Cs of about 12, and generally they haven't lived for very long. So 8.2 for me was never really good enough, and it was one of the things that ultimately led me to the decision to switch over to pump therapy, because I knew that having that device helping me to control my blood sugars would be helpful in bringing that A1C level down. So I started on my first pump probably about 6 years ago now, as the crow flies, and it was going well. I avoided continuous glucose monitoring like the plague because I already had the pump that was tethered to my body, and I wasn't a big fan, especially given my line of work, in having 2 devices tethered to my body. But given that in my line of work it's always preferable to have your blood sugar a little bit on the higher side than the lower side to avoid any potential complications, I never really worried about it too overly much. But when I got onto this brand new pump, when the warranty ran out on the previous one, my pump trainer as well as my endocrinologist said, you know what, if you get onto this new SmartGuard technology, it's going to go a great length towards helping you with better blood sugar control and better levels and better A1Cs. So that's what I did, and I got onto the continuous glucose monitor, which with the SmartGuard technology that's on my pump actually tests my blood sugar every 5 minutes. So don't get me to do the math here, but considering that that's 12 times per hour over 24 hours, you're looking at about well over 200 blood sugar verifications per day, as opposed to, even if I'm doing it once an hour through finger pricks, you're looking at 12 to 16 times a day. So there's quite a significant difference. Plus, the SmartGuard technology will actually microbolus and provide small doses of insulin when my blood sugar is dropping. It'll taper off my basal rates when my blood sugar is starting to, or sorry, the opposite. It'll microbolus when my blood sugars are starting to go high, and it'll taper the insulin off when it starts to go low. So the technology actually helps to maintain as good a control as possible. So that being said, over the past, I'll say 2 or 3 years, I've been in those low to mid 7% for my A1C. And when I saw my endocrinologist about 6 months ago, he and I got to talking about it, and he said if there was one thing I could improve about my diabetes, what would it be? So I threw down the gauntlet and I gave myself a challenge. I said, you know what? I haven't had an A1C below 7 in well over 15 years, if even back then. So the challenge I would like to see is to have my A1C below 7. So he said, well, you know what, if you continue to work hard at it and you keep pushing, exercising, eating well, and doing the things you're doing with the pump, you should be able to make that dream a reality. So he challenged me on it, and he said, next time I see you, I want to see a 6 as the first digit on your A1C. Needless to say, the past 6 months I've been pushing. Depending on who you talk to, like I've had a lot of people that have said A1C is an outdated technology or an outdated test. It's not an effective means of measuring your overall blood sugars because it can be manipulated through severe highs and lows. So the bottom line is it's an average. So the problem with it being an average is over that 3-month period, let's say that for 4 or 5 weeks you're running really high blood sugars. You're eating like a trash can, you're doing whatever the hell you want, you've got poor blood sugar control, you're rarely testing, and you're always high. And then all of a sudden, let's say after about that 5th week, you snap out of it and you tell yourself, hey, you know what? I need to take better control of my life. I need to take better control of my blood sugar levels. So you start dieting, you exercise more, you test your blood sugars more. All of a sudden, because you're pushing so hard and your body's not used to it, you're getting severe lows. And you have severe lows over the next few weeks until you manage to taper off and find a happy medium. Well, the problem is you had extreme lows for weeks, then you had extreme highs for weeks. So at the end of the day, your A1C will probably still be in range because it's an average. So if you take an extreme high and extreme low, the average will be right in the middle. Okay? So the thing is your endocrinologist or your general practitioner can still use A1C as an effective means of checking your blood sugar control as long as it's used in conjunction with a logbook. So you need to be able to see all those blood sugar readings, which is why it's important to test your blood often. Nowadays, a lot of people talk about time in range, which basically means instead of focusing on a good A1C, you're trying to focus on maintaining your blood sugars in that normal blood sugar range, which, to be honest, you should have been doing this whole time anyways. Myself, as a preference, I keep my normal range from 5.5 to 7 is the range I aim for. So the more time that I spend in range, the better the odds my A1C will be good, my blood sugar levels will be good. It's kind of a catch-all. So A1C is still effective and it's still useful. It just has to be useful in the right context and be interpreted by your health practitioner. So just some food for thought there. But the bottom line and the exciting part and the whole point that I'm making this post this morning is that finally, after over 15 years of never doing it, my A1C reading this morning was in fact 6.9. So I'm very excited. My endocrinologist is very excited. He's quite confident I might even be able to drop it down another point or two to 6.6, 6.7 if I make a couple of little tweaks and a little fine-tuned changes, which we discussed and adjusted my pump this morning. So I'm very excited to see what changes that might bring. So the take-home lesson here for all my diabetic viewers or diabetic readers, if you're lucky enough to be reading my blog, is you actually need 4 things absolutely and without exception if you're going to work on proper blood sugar control. The first one is proper diet. Here's the reality. If you eat like a trash can, eventually you're going to get dirty and withered just like a used trash can. So you got to make sure you're eating some lean proteins. You're including lots of cruciferous and different brands of vegetables. I'd say fruits as well, but as a preference, I don't eat a lot of fruit, mostly because I don't like all the added sugar it pumps into my system. But fruits can be important for vitamins and minerals and stuff that you need. So by all means, don't be afraid to include it. But diet is a big thing. Exercise is the next. Listen, I know diabetic can make you a little bit lethargic sometimes. It can sap your energy. It can make you feel like you don't want to get up and move. But the reality is you have to get up and move. You don't have a choice. You stop moving, you stop living. Okay, so if you have diabetes, even if you don't have diabetes, you should be getting up off that couch and working out. Minimum 30 minutes a day. Okay, it doesn't matter if you just go for a walk, go for a run, ride your bike, do some push-ups, do some sit-ups. There's tons of workouts on the net that you can download that you can do in the comfort of your home using only your own body weight. So there is literally no excuse. The third is you got to test your blood. Even myself with the continuous glucose monitor, I test my blood at least 3-4 times a day. Some of that is because the pump requires it for proper calibration of the CGM, but for some of it, it's also because the way it was described to me is your blood sugar is like a train. The finger prick you do to test your blood is the engine, and your CGM is the caboose. So the caboose is always running behind the train. So if your engine suddenly starts going uphill and starts reaching those higher blood sugars, your sensor is only going to catch up a little while later. So if your sensor says 9, your blood sugar might actually be at 11 or 12, and you may not necessarily know it. So I like to test my blood sugar a few times throughout the day, despite the CGM, just to keep myself in the know of what my actual levels are at. So that's the third thing. And the fourth thing is get your blood work done and visit your health practitioners. Whether it's your endocrinologist, your general practitioner, any of those, you do need the assistance of a medical practitioner. I've known a lot of people with diabetes who don't bother seeing their doctors or taking good medical care of themselves, but you need that help. Diabetes is like the flow of life. It never stops changing, it never stops growing. There's always going to be something new, and there's always going to be something improved. If I hadn't started seeing an endocrinologist 6 years ago, there's a good chance I wouldn't have gotten on pump therapy, and there's a good chance I wouldn't have been made extremely happy this morning with that 6.9% A1C. I'd probably be sitting still in those high 8s. So don't sell your health practitioner short. Don't assume that Dr. Google has the answer to everything. Sometimes you need that in-person touch. So that's it for me, guys. I'm off. I'm going to run home now and brag to my wife about my good A1C levels. If you haven't done so already, make sure to visit my main site at www.thebloggingbuddhist.ca or .com, where I post daily content about diabetes, Buddhism, health and fitness, and martial arts. And I'll see you on the next one.